got the element on one of our 2-gallon steamers. Okay, so this video applies to things like the Gel 3, the Gel 6, the ELG 4, the ELG 6, okay? Anything that's in this 2-gallon format here, like you see here. Before we get started, let's talk about safety a little bit. We work on the steamers. First thing you want to do is make sure the machine's unplugged, okay? We already working on something that's electrical in there, so that's very important. And then secondly, make sure that you have no pressure in it, okay? You can see on the gauge here it's reading 0, but just to be sure, we always make sure the vent is open, okay? So this is actually a customer machine. It's was sent back to us. It's about 5 years old, and it was sent back to us because it needs the element change in it. So this is a perfect candidate for this video. Our repair shop's already estimated it. They went through, they determined it needs an element, so we're going to go ahead and change it for them. Before we get started, let's look through our tools that you're going to need. We recommend having some rags. We like using the shop rags here. You're going to need a Phillips head screwdriver. I've got this razor blade we're going to use to scrape the gasket material off from the old element. You can use a gasket scraper or putty knife also. Utility knife's handy. You're going to want a ratchet with a little bit of an extension and a 9/16 socket. That's to get the actual bolts out. A pair of channel lock pliers is pretty handy, and a 3/8 nut driver. You could also use a 3/8 socket as well, but it's less handy. And then a small ball peen hammer. This is on the big side. You wouldn't want anything bigger than this. We have our replacement element gasket, and we have our replacement element. Okay. And then for silicone, you're going to want to use a high temperature red silicone. This is what we use here at the factory. This RTD 6500 by Silco. You can get this high temperature red silicone in smaller containers at hardware stores, automotive parts stores, right? Just make sure it's high temperature and it's red. So how we'll start this is we're going to take the front door off. Normally there's 5 screws here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. As I mentioned before, this has already been through our repair shop, so they only put 2 screws back in it. So, left. Okay, so this one here, this is actually pretty, I wouldn't say it's typical, but it's not uncommon to see this. What actually happened here is this element gasket failed over here in this corner and basically let there be a small steam leak, okay? So what we're actually seeing here, this is like calcium from hard water from using tap water mixed with a little bit of like iron oxide from the tank, okay? So that small leak is probably what caused this element to fail because it's because of all the corrosion in here. So inside that element, you actually just have, there's 2 tubes here. One holds your low water reset, and then the other one holds your actual temperature probe, okay? And then where the connections are in the front, the power circulates through here. It's got a resistive wire in there, and that's what actually is heating the water. So what we will start with this is we're going to, I'm gonna grab a rag and try to knock as much of the stuff off as we can now. So we'll clean this up a little bit. So luckily this is just calcium, it comes off pretty easy. So we're going to start by taking the wires off. This is a gel unit, so it's got 3 wires on here. ELG only have 2. Now if you don't remember how these wires go, if you're not very good with that kind of thing, I'd recommend labeling with like masking tape, okay? So I'll pull these off. Kind of tuck them in over here so they don't get in our way later. There we go. Take the washers off. The new element will come with new hardware, so it's not important to keep this stuff. Take the wire off from the thermostat. I'm just going to bend that wire up out of the way. Okay, now I'm going to grab my screwdriver and kind of chip away a little bit of this. We don't want to damage the probes here, okay? So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to pull out this is actually the temperature probe here, this left one. You can see it's got this coil over here. Now it's really important you don't damage this coil. There's actually alcohol inside of that, and that's how it transmits the temperature from inside the tank into the actual thermometer device itself. So you can see actually as I pull this out how that coil unwinds to give you room. Okay, there we go. You can set that down here when it get damaged, out of the way. I'm gonna do the same thing with the low water reset. This one bends, so it's a lot easier. Okay, I'm gonna set those down out of the way. Like I said, you really want to be careful you don't bend that stuff around. Next thing we're gonna do is I'm gonna grab my 9/16 socket and we're gonna actually take these element bolts out. Kind of get a good feel for how tight these are, because you're going to want to tighten them to that same level of tightness when you reinstall the new one. So they're not like as tight as you can physically go on the wrench site, but they're also not snug either. There we go, there's the second one. We are going to reuse these bolts. We'll clean them up a little bit. If you have bolts that are, maybe covered in silicone or really badly corroded, we do recommend changing them. And these actually are stainless steel bolts too. So, don't just go to your hardware store and get just any regular bolt. If you want, you can purchase them from us too when you buy the new element. Here with a clean rag, clean the bolts up some, get all the stuff out of the threads. There's a bit of silicone in that one. I'm going to just kind of grab my razor blade and dig it out. There we go. Okay, at this point here, we're ready to remove our element. You're going to see it's glued in there. You can actually see the 2 layers of silicone that kind of squeeze out there around the gasket. The easiest way we find to do this is to grab your ball peen hammer and you're going to tap it on the corner. If you look, the flange is round and the element is square. So if you tap it on the corner, it'll actually twist out of there. You can kind of see here. What we're basically going to try to do is we're going to spin it, and that's what's going to break the element gasket loose without actually damaging the tank or damaging the element. So, not that it's any good anyway. There we go. So that one just slides right out of there. Makes it otherwise that element looks like it was in okay shape. A lot of calcium deposits in this nozzle here. We're going to grab a rag and we're going to clean that out. The element gasket is still stuck on there. You can see it's, it's green. It didn't come out with the element. You don't see it stuck on the back there. So I'm going to get a razor blade in there behind it. There we go. Okay, this one is chipping off actually. Which makes our job a little more complicated. Typically, if you don't have a big leak like this, that typically comes off in one piece. The problem is with all the steam rushing by, it's actually made it hard and brittle. So. You can see over here, you can see right there where the steam leak was. Of course, anytime you're using a knife, be careful you're not putting your hands in the line of fire where you can get yourself injured. Okay. Like I said, right in here is going to need some extra attention where the actual leak was. So I'm going to silicone off the bottom there. too, if you have like sandpaper, like 80 grit sandpaper would be pretty good for this. So this is the most tedious part. Like I said before, this one actually had a leak, so this is probably the hardest scenario you're going to come across with scraping the gasket. Normally it just kind of pops right off. Okay. Thinking that's looking pretty good. It's clean, we got all this calcium off of it. Make sure there's nothing in the holes. Just got a little bit of water stuck in it from the steam leak there. Okay, at this point I'm gonna brush all the stuff out of it. We'll actually vacuum that out when we're all done here. Okay. So if you get any water on it, it's really important you get that dry. Okay. The silicone won't stick to the water. Clean that up. I see a little ridge there. I'm gonna try to scrape that off if we can. Doesn't look like we can. Okay. So the next thing we're gonna do is get ready to reassemble this. We're gonna put our gasket on. Okay. And we're gonna put a little bit of silicone. And what the silicone's gonna do, if you look in here, you see this isn't a very regular surface anymore. Since they had the steam leak out here, the silicone's gonna kind of fit into that. And then the gasket's there for just the structure. Okay. So I'm gonna grab my silicone and I'm just gonna do just a small. Actually, do this on the rag so I don't glue the table. We're going to do a small ring just around the hole, okay? And this part's tricky. I'm going to flip it over to the same thing. Okay. We're going to take that, stick it on the flange, move it around a little bit. There we go. Take your element, your new element. You want to make sure that the wiring connections are at the bottom. Slide that straight in. Same kind of deal, we're going to move that around as much as we can. Not a whole lot of room there, and start replacing the bolts. Just put all the bolts in finger tight. I like to go in this, X pattern, corner to corner. Off, and then at that point I start snugging them up very evenly with the torque. You see the silicone starting to squeeze out there. Okay, now actually that one will go a little further there. Go around one more time. In this X pattern. Okay, they're all snug. I'm gonna grab my wrench. And I'm gonna tighten that down. So this is where in the beginning of the video I said pay attention to how tight it is when you start. You don't want to make it about that tight putting it back together. Okay. Next step, we're gonna replace our temperature probe. dripped a little silicone on that, so I'll wipe that off. Temperature probe goes in on the left. I want to make sure I don't trap that one there. Slide it back in. If you come around this way to Cody, you can show how the coil tightens back up. And then the low water reset over on the right. There. And last but not least is we'll put our wiring back on. So you can see the new element comes with new hardware. You gotta be really careful you don't over tighten these and break them off here where it goes into the actually resisted piece of it. If you don't remember how yours came apart, like I said, I recommend taking pictures in the beginning or labeling them with masking tape, the wires. Every machine, depending on what SKU you have, it's a gel 6, a gel 3, an ELG. They're all going to be a little different than what's in this video here. So this is a gel 3, so if you have a gel 3, it'll be pretty similar. Put those two wires back on. You want to make sure you go washer, wires, washer, and then the nut. So it's like a symmetric little sandwich there. Grab my nut driver. Like I said, these don't need to be super tight, just, you know, a hair more than snug. There we go. And that's it. At this point there, we'd be able to put, well, you know, I want to let that sit for 24 hours actually, so the silicone cures, or actually whatever your silicone manufacturer recommends. And then at that point, fill it back up with water, make sure there's no leaks with just water in it. If it doesn't leak, then go ahead, close the vent valve, turn the steamer back on, let it get up to pressure, with the door off. Like I said, be mindful, you stay back from it. Everything in there is electrically energized at this point there, and verify you have no leaks. Okay. Once you know you're good, you can replace the cover, put it back into service. If for some reason you're testing and you see any leaks in here, do not do anything on this with it plugged in or with it under pressure, okay? You know, don't even try to like tighten the bolt down a little bit, because if you're snapping the bolt off the element, it can fail and you can get burned, you know, or hurt pretty badly. So anytime you have to make an adjustment or do something different in here, power the machine back off, let the pressure come down, and then make sure it's vented, okay? And that's it. That's changing out the element on one of our 2-gallon steamers.